previous field season and summarize all the cool work and projects that we were involved in 2024. So as Brett mentioned, my name is Maddie. I'm a field tech in the Monitoring Centre, and I've been here for the last 2.5 years. And I am excited to get to be the one to share the accomplishments and the stories from my colleagues from last spring and summer with you all, as this really is all of our story to share today. And before we get going, I just thought it would be worth a reminder that this is going to be a more of a high-level overview of our work, and that each of these projects could be a webinar presentation in and of itself. So if you want more in-depth information about these protocols or the projects themselves, you can find a lot of that information on our website. Sweet. So to start off, I just wanted to give a bit of a background information about ourselves here at the Monitoring Centre of the ABMI to kind of situate you in the mindset of the work that we do here. So the ABMI as a whole collects a wide range of data on species, habitats, and human footprint from the boreal forest in the north to the grasslands in the south. And we serve as the biodiversity yardstick for the province of Alberta. Hence our slogan, "It's our nature to know." The ABMI then converts this data into status indicators of species, habitats, and land use to report on the health of Alberta's biodiversity. So in sum, we track species and how their habitats are changing. This does result in better information about our biodiversity, and ultimately better information equals to better decisions. Having this reliable data supports informed environmental decision-making at various levels across the province. So from this, one of our guiding principles is you manage what you measure. But to get this information, the first step we have to do is we have to actually go out into nature. The ABMI's Monitoring Centre, or MC for short, is the hub of our field operations. We are all the boots on the ground throughout Alberta, completing data collection. Well, there's a little bit of an echo there, for the ABMI's various projects and objectives. This work is what we're going to focus on today. So all that field work that we did last year. We're also in charge of land access and obtaining permissions from various landowners and partners across Alberta, and for supporting the development of protocols in a way that's implementable and achievable. So without going out to collect data from the source, a lot of ABMI's products, such as our biodiversity browser and the species status and trend monitoring, would not be possible. So here at the MC, we're basically just that first step in the overall journey for data and science within the ABMI. And a little bit more of who we are. These were our homes last year. So for most of the year, we're based out of Vegreville, Alberta, in the Initech Alberta offices. And then for field work this past spring and summer, we had the privilege of all of our staff being located out of the Lac La Biche campus, which we all enjoyed the benefits of being all together last summer. And these are the rest of our homes, and I mean sites. When we weren't in Vegreville or Lac La Biche, these were all of the places you could find us working this spring and summer out in the field or the forest or the fen, collecting data and samples. We worked on 7 different projects this past summer, which I'm just going to list for you here. These were, number 1, our Ecosystem Health Terrestrial project. Number 2, our Ecosystem Health Aquatics project. Number 3, the Oil Sands Monitoring Terrestrial and the Oil Sands Monitoring Wetlands projects. Number 5, the Biodiversity Trajectories, otherwise known as BDT. Restoration Monitoring, otherwise known as RM. And number 7, Vegetation Regeneration Monitoring, which is a mouthful, so we call it VRM, ground truthing. And here's just a little bit of a more zoomed in view of that site map there. It's kind of hard to see it all at once because there is a lot going on out there across the province of Alberta. So if we just take a little bit of a closer look, we'll break it down in the pink and the green and the black stars. You can see our RM work. This is mostly localized in the Grand Cache region last summer. So here, in black triangles, you're going to see where we had VDT sites, and those are going to be throughout the boreal here. And pink dots is where we did some of our VRM ground truthing in the oil sands region. And then in blue dots, these ones are going to go kind of up and down the province on the west side here. That's where a lot of our ecosystem health aquatic sites were last year. Throughout the province, in those red dots there, basically everywhere else, you're going to see where we had ecosystem health terrestrial sites. And then localized in the Fort McMurray oil sands region, you're going to see the blue dots for our oil sands monitoring and the orange for our oil sands terrestrial, and blue is wetlands. So this summer, we took wall-to-wall monitoring quite literally, and we covered 3 of the 4 corners of Alberta with sites as far south as Medicine Hat and Pincher Creek, and further north than High Level. Some of those Medicine Hat sites were actually so close to the US border that we got notifications from our phone carriers that we were now at risk of roaming charges. It's also worth just noting that I mentioned a lot of those localized sites in and around Grand Cache for some of our targeted work with restoration monitoring, and in and around the oil sands region with some of that oil sands monitoring work as well. And just saying, this is how I picture all of you guys looking at that map, because that's how I have to look at it to see all the detail in it. But by the numbers, this is everything that we accomplished. I'm going to be using the term site kind of loosely here because not all of our projects determine the locations where they collect their data in the same way. But in total, we did complete 205 we did complete 5 different compartments, 77 VRM plots across 5 different areas of interest, 50 ecosystem health terrestrial sites, 41 oil sands monitoring wetland sites, 30 biodiversity trajectory sites, and 20 ecosystem health aquatic sites, for a grand total of 588 sites visited. So there are a lot of little dots on that map there, representing everywhere that we went. I mean, I'm tired just looking at that number and all those sites across the province. I don't know about you folks. Almost 600 sites worth of data collection is pretty impressive. And of course, we couldn't have completed all those almost 600 sites without the people in this picture and more people who aren't. All of your contributions, big or small, made the field season happen, and we appreciate all of your hard work. You know, data collection isn't just magically arriving at these sites and taking down some numbers. It does take the whole team to accomplish what we do, with the work really starting the winter before it all happens. From planning our sites, the protocols and schedules, to having access permissions granted, completing hiring for all of our summer techs, having everyone trained and certified, and then getting all the equipment together, and then finally getting to do the hard journeys to site and the long days out in the field, and then add on all the troubleshooting that comes with all of this. And then after all that is done, we can finally collect the data that we need. So a big thank you to you all. This past summer, we had the privilege of working with 20 summer technicians, 1 Indigenous intern. There were 6 of us full-time technicians, 7 field coordinators, 2 access coordinators, a logistics coordinator, and of course, our field operations supervisor, Greg, and our director, Colin. So if any of you folks are listening, please give yourselves a big pat on the back. We did a great job last summer. Did I mention that it takes planning? Lots and lots of planning and replanning on the fly. Whiteboards become an essential piece for the field season. I mean, can anyone else besides our field coordinators make sense of these whiteboards? I can't. The work behind the scenes that they do to make sure everyone and everything is going where we need it in this changing work environment is quite commendable. I mean, I'm always impressed that our field coordinators can fit in things like sleep and eating during the summer. But where exactly did we go? And what exactly did we do there? Fear not, for all roads lead to Red Earth Creek by Greg Brook, probably. I just feel like this is something Greg would say to try to be motivational to us. But if you've ever been to Red Earth Creek, you'll know how unmotivational that is. So in the spirit of ABMI MC Wrapped, here are some more numbers for you. First, here are our top 5 visited locations based on the number of field days worked while we were there. So number 1, our top location was Fort McMurray. Number 2 was Slave Lake. Number 3 was Red Earth Creek. Number 4 was Grand Cache. And number 5 was Christina Lake. So not all of our roads led to Red Earth Creek this summer. It's just quite a few of them. And then based on survey feedback, these are the top campgrounds that the ABMI Summer Field Tech stayed at in 2024. If you've ever need travel tips within Alberta, the ABMI MC is the place to go for them. We have all stayed in a lot of different towns and hotels and campgrounds throughout Alberta at this point. And then, talking about all those places we've been, these are just some of the examples of some of the routes our full-time staff had to take during some of our field trips out supporting our summer field technicians. All these widespread sites meant for some gallivanting across the province for us. I got to get through quite a few audiobooks and podcast series on these drives. But okay, I get it. You're nosy. Enough of where we were. I'm sure you're all curious to hear what we actually did in all of these spots. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide an overview of what we did and where for each of those 7 projects I mentioned off the bat, starting with our Ecosystem Health Terrestrial project. So our ecosystem health projects, both the terrestrial and aquatics, have been around since our inception in 2007. So they may be the work that you're most familiar with from the ABMI. Our Ecosystem Health Terrestrial had a busy but successful summer where we visited 50 sites between 3 and 4 times each, between the winter camera and ARU deployments, spring site establishments and spring protocol visits, and summer protocol visits. We were able to complete the majority of protocols as usual, which includes collecting our soil cores and tree cores, taking ecosites data, retrieving our cameras and ARUs that we deploy in the winter, doing downvoting material transects, taking site photos, and measuring canopy cover. However, EH Terrestrial did have its own set of unique challenges to data collection this summer, which had to result in some modifications to the amount of data we collected for some protocols in order to limit the amount of time in the field. So for some of the protocols, we just had to reduce the number of plots we completed. So for spring trees, moss and lichen collection, and vascular plant protocols in certain circumstances, just so that everyone was getting home on time. EH Terrestrial was also one of the most widespread projects across the province this past summer, with staff traveling to High Level, Slave Lake, Rocky Mountain House, Pincher Creek, Medicine Hat, and more in between, which you can see from those red dots on the map here. And then in the photos here, you can see some examples of some of the work we did. So the collection of some soil cores and some tree cores, some lichen and vascular plant survey, taking some site locations in a wheat field here, and going out to do some camera and ARU retrievals in this photo. And then I'm just going to go through some of the challenges and highlights each project faced as well. Some of the highlights for our staff working on this project this summer included getting to work on the Wainwright military base and get a glimpse of what goes on inside there. The staff who worked there said that discerning human disturbance for ecosite classifications there was quite unique. And other staff got to enjoy working in the southern foothills within sites of Waterton Lake National Park. You can see some of that work here, while other staff got to go on helicopter rides above the boreal, which is where this photo was taken. As well, we got to enjoy less of an impact of wildfires this past summer on the implementation of our field work after the 2023 fires had major impacts on our site selections and access the season previous. However, this less impact of fire was in exchange for a few more black bear friends choosing to cause some mischief for us instead at our sites. Other challenges were some long drives and long access to site, which everyone was up for, but it did have an impact, like I mentioned, on some of our data collection, having to reduce the number of plots for some of those protocols. And I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but it's not very fun when you pull into Slave Lake and you hear Google Maps say, turn left in 427 kilometers on your way to High Level. Like, what? I don't have to do anything for 400 kilometers? But one of the best highlights of the summer is we got treated to a spectacular Northern Lights show in May, which I think some other people might have seen as well. But I mean, how is that not a highlight? Look at these gorgeous photos. I mean, that's just the artistry of nature right there. These are taken by some of our staff outside of Lac La Biche while we were staying there. And then on top of all of our regular standard protocols that I talked about for ecosystem health terrestrial, we had some fun additional pilot projects for the techs in 2024, some of which were new to us and some of them that we've done in the past. So out of those 50 ecosystem health terrestrial sites in total, we had 80 eye button temperature sensors that are paired with camera deployments to validate their internal thermometers. We deployed 17 camera height comparisons, which is where we do the deployment of cameras at our standard 1 meter height and then pair it with the deployment of a camera at a lower 0.5 meter height to compare detection rates for different species. We had 7 sites with peat plot pilot protocols. Try saying that 5 times fast. We had 18 sites with summer soil collection for summer mite phenology. And we had 10 sites where we deployed blue vein traps for the Alberta Native Bee Council to monitor native bee populations. The next project we worked on this summer was the Ecosystem Health Aquatics Project. In 2024, we were able to successfully collect data at 20 wetland sites all over Alberta. Protocols that we completed at the EH aquatic sites include aquatic invertebrate collection, for which we completed both the ABMI and cabin collection protocols. We did wetland plant plots, shoreline characteristics, water depth measurements, water chemistry, and site photos. This summer was actually the 3rd and final year of the ABMI invertebrate collection and cabin collection protocol comparison testing, and we implemented cabin collection at all 20 of those 2024 sites. EH Aquatics was also quite a far-reaching program this summer, with sites stretching from basically the Northwest Territories border all the way down to Lethbridge in the south, and including the mountains and foothills in between. These diverse locations, which you can see here, meant that they were exciting to visit, but they also meant that there was a lot of time by crews traveling between locations this summer. For the challenges and highlights of Ecosystem Health Aquatics, on top of those long drives, there was also, because of these widespread sites, also included lots of challenges, but fun access. You can see some of the quadding they had to do in this photo here to get to some of these wetlands. There was also a day that a crew had to collect 27 aquatic invert Nalgenes full of water, which is believably super heavy and too many Nalgenes to fit into our backpacks. So they had to fill their waders, their nets, and any available pocket to make it work. I think that definitely made for a challenging, long day for them. But I mean, then you get to see cute guys like this little tiger salamander. So that's a highlight in my book. And then from field coordinator Stephanie, she will never forget when a tree actually tried to eat her this summer. So in her words, I was with a crew in a forest with very large trees, and I was leaning against one of the trees while waiting for the crew to finish up. A gust of wind went through the canopy, and the tree I was leaning against swayed. As it swayed, a crack in the trunk, large enough to fit my entire arm up to the shoulder, opened up just a few inches from where my shoulder was against the tree. As soon as the wind gust passed, the crack closed up again and was virtually invisible in the furrows of the tree bark. I decided that I wasn't going to lean on any of the trees after that. I mean, I would not forget that anytime soon either, Steph. So all you listeners, beware out there. Look out for the trees trying to get you. The third project I'm going to talk about today was our oil sands monitoring terrestrial project. OSM terrestrial work is focused mainly on the before and after dose response, otherwise known as BADER, study design, looking at the impacts of human activity and footprint, specifically oil sands industrial activities on terrestrial biology. And this is done to understand how species and communities are changing in response to specific oil sands stressors. So to do this work, we deployed 205 locations of paired wildlife cameras and autonomous recording units, or ARUs, across 5 different landscape units within the oil sands monitoring region. As you can see, they are the light green dots on this map here, is where we went this summer. This summer was actually the first round of site revisits that we've done, redeploying units in the same locations as we did in 2021. And then the impressive part of the OSM terrestrial deployment is that in order to capture enough breeding bird activity, all of these units had to be deployed by June 24th. So you can see in the top left photo here, one of our crews working on one of those deployments. Amongst those 205 locations, 33 of them also had pilots of that camera height comparison study where we deploy the additional camera at 0.5 meters height. And as well, 75 ARUs had the pilot playback protocol implemented, which is a protocol that is helping to calculate how sound is detected by the ARU's microphones as a function of habitat type, topography, and distance. As usual for the summer and for this region, crews did face some challenges accessing some of the selected sites due to forest fires, flooded creeks too swollen to cross, and some washed out bridges. The Fort McMurray region is also known for having lots of mud and muskeg to navigate your trucks and ATVs through. I mean, it is the boreal after all, which is both a challenge and potentially fun to get stuck in. Some people out there might say it's type 1 fun. Some people might say it's type 2 fun. Some of you might say that's not really any fun at all to keep getting stuck. But luckily for us, our crews all thought it was a pretty good time. This photo in the top here was taken just outside of Fort Mac on one of the rainiest weeks of the field shifts. The crews went out to attempt to access the area, but they actually spent half the day getting stuck and unstuck on a power line with the muskeg in some spots over 1 meter deep. They still had a blast despite all those obstacles. And then just at the bottom here, you can see some examples of the photos that get taken on our trail cameras that we deployed in 2023. And then just stay tuned for the 2024 photos because those cameras are still out there collecting them. The fourth project we worked on was our oil sands monitoring wetlands. This was our 3rd summer collaborating on the oil sands monitoring wetlands project, which includes assisting with site establishment in the spring and then returning in the summer to complete the data collection. So this spring, we had our full-time technicians join staff from the provincial government in Fort McMurray, and they established 37 sites for the season. However, some pivoting did had to occur between the spring and summer visits due to those fires near Fort McMurray, with a total of 34 of those established sites being completed for summer protocols. And then they added on an additional 7 sites from our 2022 site list for some revisits and some initial visits, instead of some of those that they had established as part of the contingency planning with those fires. So that totals 41 sites for OSM wetlands. Some of the names of the sites that they visited this year included Bruce Willicks Swamp and whatever Fen, if that just gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the fun they have in OSM wetlands. Summer data collection and protocols completed by our crews at OSM wetland sites include vascular plant plots, vegetation structure measurements, photo plots, biomass samples, and substrate characteristic measurements. So in these photos, you can see some of the fieldwork being completed with a photo plot being taken at the top here and some vascular plant and biomass surveys at the bottom left. As well, in this photo here, you can see some of the setup that we have for drying all of our bags of biomass samples in the warehouse in Fort McMurray before they get shipped down to the processing center staff at the University of Alberta. This protocol gets a lot of vegetation to dry. It takes a lot of space. And then, as I alluded to, things didn't go perfectly smooth in OSM wetlands. Part of the contingency plan was implemented due to that combination of forest fires in the region, flooding, extreme heat, and some pilot sick days, which did limit our ability to return to complete summer work for some of those initially established sites. And then that big fire near Fort McMurray in May and fires throughout the summer did have some impacts on OSM wetlands work and sites as well. But A highlight for our OSM wetland staff is that they did have the privilege of getting to do lots of flying around in helicopters to get to all their sites, which I think is pretty fun. Another highlight for staff included getting to celebrate a few birthdays together, having movie and spa and game nights together at their accommodations. See one of the cakes, I believe Jose, if you're listening, he decorated this one. He's one of our lichen taxonomists. And one more noted highlight was the crew getting visited by a mama moose and her calf while they were working at a sow, swimming around towards them while they were doing their work. I mean, that's pretty magical. That's pretty cool. I love seeing their big ears sticking up out of the water. I think they got some good videos of it too. Our fifth project we're going to talk about is our Biodiversity Trajectories Project, or BDT. So BDT is a new to us project at the Monitoring Centre, which is BDT. So with data collection that started in 2023, the project asks the questions, do biodiversity and habitat elements recover similarly in forest stands that have burned or ones that have been harvested? Basically, it was just designed to evaluate and compare regeneration activities post-fire and post-harvest. You can see some of that pine regeneration in the site photo here. So this summer, we targeted 30 sites throughout the boreal forest. 9 of these 30 sites were areas of fire impact, and 21 sites were in harvest impacted areas. And then 8 of those 30 sites were also done with what we call a disarticulated layout, which includes survey plots in forest retention patches. So you can see that kind of disarticulated layout where one plot is off on its own over here. And then at BDT sites, crews completed site establishment and spring protocols selected from the ecosystem health terrestrial protocols that are specific to the project questions. So this included tree stand measurements, downwoody material transects, and site photos. And then this coming summer, crews are actually going to go back to the same sites to complete summer protocols. And then cameras and air use are going to hopefully be deployed and retrieved this year as well. Forest fires also greatly impacted the BDT project and their site selections this summer. And contingency plans were also implemented for this project, which resulted in the canceling of 11 helicopter access sites. However, despite these challenges, we did pivot the site selection and crews were still able to access and complete protocols at 30 sites, which achieved our goal for the year, which is a big success in and of itself. Crews also tell me that they faced losing battles with many wasps' nests this summer and took many stings, unfortunately. But despite all these challenges, Field Coordinator Marshall McKenzie still says that it was honestly a pleasure to work with such a great group between his summer field techs, which are pictured down here, and other full-time ABMI staff. So keep up the good work, everyone. Ooh, we're getting there, guys, don't worry. Our sixth project that I'm going to talk about is our restoration monitoring. And this is another new to us program that started this past winter and is in partnership with the government of Alberta. And it's being done to help monitor, track, and check the restoration work on seismic lines in woodland caribou ranges and habitats. So over the past winter, so about a year ago now, from January to March, restoration monitoring staff were out in the Alopesh and Little Smoky woodland caribou ranges near Grand Cache, where they were doing legacy seismic line restoration QAQC. Last winter, we were also involved in the development of the protocols to evaluate the planting process for new seedlings and the survival of previously planted seedlings. And then this summer, from June to July, our RM crews were out doing survival assessments in 2 of the compartments or areas near Grand Cache that have been completed. These assessments are checking the growth and survival of the planted seedlings 2 to 4 years after planting on these restored seismic lines. And then from July to August, they did planting checks on newly planted restored seismic lines. They also did a camera pilot program where they deployed 57 cameras in a compartment pre-seismic line restoration treatment. And then the goal is to have those cameras go back up on the exact same trees after the restoration treatment is completed to see what is different. So then in the top left 2 photos here, you can see example of what some of these seismic lines look like after the restoration treatments, with mounding and tree felling being done to help close off these lines for easy access by wolves and humans. And it also helps create microhabitats to encourage tree and shrub growth. In the top right photo here, you can see just how some of that tree felling compares to a human. Pretty tall, some of it. And I mean, one of the biggest highlights of getting to work in caribou habitat is actually getting to see lots of woodland caribou, which is pretty special given their status in Alberta as well. We had some big fishing enthusiasts on the team this year who got to enjoy the abundant fishing in Grand Cache, with everyone catching many rainbow trout and a few graylings as well. One incident of a broken into trailer didn't keep the spirits down for too long, and we were lucky to have nothing stolen out of that travel trailer. And then RM also enjoyed some birthdays and some birthday barbecues to go with them, which was a highlight. You can see the happy crew down here with some of their treats that they got. And then our last project that we were involved in was the VRM ground truthing. So the vegetation regeneration mapping ground truthing project was a protocol that we were able to opportunistically have crews work on throughout the summer, and was our #1 priority to help fill any gaps in our work schedule. Crews went out and collected ground truthing validation protocols that support the ABMI's large-scale LiDAR data collection program, and they assess vegetation structure and types of human footprint disturbances in Alberta's oil sands region. So for this, our crews completed 77 plots that include 360 camera photos and highly accurate GPS locations, as well as plant surveys. They also collect approximately 20 hours of GoPro videos while traveling along these seismic lines for some of our staff to review and look at. We got to visit 5 of 9 areas of interest. You can see the 5 different kind of areas. The dots are all of the plots are clustered there that were identified, which surpassed our goal of 3 at the start of the season. So that was a success. I also hear that crews had a lot of fun getting to quad around in the Richardson sand dune area pictured here. I'm pretty jealous of that. That would be a pretty neat area to get to go to. Whew. And a bonus this year, for the first time since the COVID pandemic, we had technicians actually go to the processing center of the ABMI to help with the sorting of samples that they collected this past summer. So a subset of our summer technicians actually moved into Lister residences in Alberta and helped with the processing center with the sorting of biomass, aquatic invertebrates, vascular plants, bryophytes, and lichen samples. We actually had over 100,000 samples collected across the protocols this summer, including lichens, bryophytes, aquatic inverts, vascular plants, and soil mites, which is crazy. So we were quite happy to be able to help the processing center get a head start on all that identification work involved with all those samples. Whew, oh my gosh, that was a lot. 7 projects is a lot. I mean, it felt like it to me and it felt like it to us this summer. So I hope everyone's not feeling too overwhelmed and is actually awake and listening still. And if not, it's time for you to wake up and lock in, because the next set of ABMI MC wrapped numbers needs some audience participation. I'm going to be bringing up a piece of our field season on the screen, and based on everything that I've told you so far, I'm going to give you a chance to think about the total number of what it would be for that thing for a field season of this size. And then once you've thought about it and you have a guess for each of these, you can type them into the chat or shout out your answers if you're feeling brave. Okay, let me just get set up here. Okay, so here's a soft one to get you warmed up. What was the number of trucks across all of our projects that we used this summer? See, anyone have any ideas? I gotta figure out how to show the chat. Ooh, 28, many, 23. You guys are actually pretty close. Janet's really close. We had 29 trucks used this summer. It's not liking that I have the chat going and this. 29. And then for information's sake, We also had 47 quads and 13 travel trailers that we used. Okay, here, this one's a little harder. What about the number of kilometers that all 29 of those trucks drove this past summer? It's a lot, I'll give you that. Ooh, Alex has a guess. Ben Mann has a guess. Ben Mann was pretty close. We actually had 267,700 kilometers driven this summer on all those trucks, which for context means you could go around the earth 6.5 times. Just crazy. That's a lot of driving. Okay, next one. How many soil cores did we collect in the spring and summer? Yeah. I'll give you a hint. It's less than the kilometers driven. Ooh, at least one. Yup. 200, 200, 150. Ooh, you guys are off by a little bit with this one. So actually, we had 1,466 soil cores collected throughout the spring and summer. Okay, maybe we'll get this one though. How many tree cores and tree cookies did we collect? 287, 100, 300. Ooh, in the thousands. Okay, this protocol is a little different. This protocol, we only had 144 tree cookies and tree cores collected. They actually all fit into one little box together. But the protocols are different, so that's why the numbers are different. Okay, next up, we're going to switch into RM work. How many kilometers of restored seismic lines did they do with survival assessments within that Grand Cache region? 100, 200, 900. Gosh, that's a lot of kilometers of seismic line. Jose, that's a lot of kilometers of seismic line. You guys are pretty optimistic. They actually did 259.8 kilometers of restored seismic lines with that survival assessment done. So that's looking at the trees 2 to 4 years after they've been planted. Okay, so with that, how many seedlings did they count in those survival assessments? Getting through this. Jeremy did yeah, keep the beaks flying, Tallulah. Ooh, I like that guess. Where'd it go? The 2,590. Pretty close. They surveyed 2,978 seedlings in those survival assessments. Okay, switching our mindset to OSM wetlands. How many bags of biomass samples were collected for OSM wetlands this past summer? So many, says Janet. Yes, it was so many. Ooh, all the bags, yeah. It's a lot. They do a lot. So they take cryptogams, they take all different categories of vascular plants, and they do litter for those biomass samples. So they actually collected 2,216. Lysandra, I think I see that you said 2,000, so pretty close. And that took 47 boxes to ship from Fort McMurray to the U of A. Okay, back to ecosystem health. Over the 17 years, how many people have collected Ecosystem Health Aquatics 1.0 data? I actually didn't know this, so this one was a fun one for me too to find out. $201, says Darko. Ooh, I don't know. Yeah, this one's a weird one, hey? But Darko is actually pretty close. Over the last 17 years, we've had 199 people who have collected data for Ecosystem Health Aquatics, which I think is pretty cool. That's a lot of different people working on that protocol. Okay, we're getting to the end. We have 2 more fun ones. How many recordings were taken on terrestrial ARUs this past summer? So that's unique sound files. We deploy, for a little hint, we deploy 4 ARUs at each site. We had 50 sites, so that's 200 ARUs, and each records from March until we pick them up in August. Jeremy, yeah, I think that's a pretty good guess at 200,000. We had 210,717 unique recordings taken across our ARUs last summer. And that's not the minutes, that's not the amount of data, that's just the unique recordings. So that's even more time when you look at it minutes and data file wise. Okay, last one, I promise. Thanks you guys for your participation. How many photos were taken on terrestrial remote wildlife cameras? Ooh, 50,000, 400,000, 1.1 million, a couple 100,000. You guys are lowballing it. There was actually 1,152,389 photos taken on ecosystem health terrestrial remote wildlife cameras from when they were deployed last winter to when they were picked up last summer. That's a lot of photos for people to tag and go through. So that's a great question, Brett. That would be a question for someone else. Some of the data taggers having to eliminate all the vegetation blowing in the wind. But yeah, it's quite impressive. That just kind of gives you a bit of context to just the amount of data that we collect here at the ABMI in our programs. Awesome. Thank you so much for all your participation, everybody. Awesome. So I'm just going to be honest. We're working out in remote locations throughout Alberta, and not everything goes right. I have mentioned some of the broader challenges each program faced, and I just wanted to emphasize how impressed and proud we all are of the way our team handles the adversity of a field season. It's inevitable that something does not go as planned, and we are able to pivot, persevere, and problem solve, ensuring we can all work safely and effectively. From things like calling in a wildfire near Fort McMurray, which I've heard flying in circles to pinpoint its exact location is quite hard on the stomach, to some damaged trucks and trailers, to other equipment issues, chipped teeth. We had some bears stealing people's lunches and backpacks. I think we had some accidental self-inflicted bear sprains this summer. And as I mentioned already, lots of wasp stings. We all got through quite a lot together. And I'll just point out that challenges like these ones are also why we make sure to spend multiple weeks preparing and training people at the start of the spring before we ever send them out into the field. Now, of course, it wouldn't be an ABMI Wrapped without some moods. Spring and summer 2024 were an adventure with lots of land explored and miles put on. So here were our 2024 MC top 5 field moods. Number 1, locked in, ready to rock to site. We access sites in all ways this year using our own feet, trucks, quads, side-by-sides, Argos, snowmobiles, and helicopters. Number 2, loving nature and loving trees. Wink, wink on that one. Number 3, hungry for knowledge and for moss. Number 4, sometimes stuck in the mud. And number 5, appreciative for the land on which we have the privilege to work. Whew. So now, the data from the summer has been QAQC'd, photos have been submitted, samples have been handed off, and we in the Monitoring Centre have all taken some well-earned time off this fall as all the data management and processing and analysis work continues in other ABMI centers. But already, our work for 2025 is well underway. Sites have already been selected, equipment's already being prepped, new protocols are already being written, and crews are currently out deploying hopefully the last of the cameras and ARUs for our ecosystem health terrestrial monitoring sites. Restoration monitoring is also out in the field right now in the full swing of things, doing that QAQC work on seismic line restorations. And we've also done a few fun shifts in British Columbia, deploying cameras for biodiversity pathways. So in the Monitoring Centre, the field work never really stops. But we're also already well underway for hiring and recruitment of summer field technicians for this coming spring and summer season. Does what we did last summer sound exciting to you? If you or somebody you know is interested, we are currently accepting applications for our 2025 summer field technicians. I think we're going to put the link in the chat for you to find, but you can also go to find it by going to the ABMI website and going to the Connect tab at the top and clicking the Careers and Opportunities page. And then take a look there to find out more information about what working with us looks like and to submit your cover letter and resume for considerations if you are interested. Let's see, yeah, Greg posted those there. And perfect. That was a lot. Oh, there was so much going on last summer, but I mean, I found it all super interesting, and it just makes you want to grab your pack and head out into the field, right? Or is that just me? Anyways, amongst all the details, I just wanted to remind everyone that it is important to remember to find the joy in being out in the field, even when you're getting swarmed by wasps. And just like this bear who found one of our little lure sticks and decided to have some fun in front of one of our cameras. I would just like to extend a sincere thank you from everyone at the Monitoring Centre and everyone at the ABMI to you folks for tuning in today. I hope you gained a little bit of an insight into what we all get up to here. And before I turn it back to Brett to open up to the floor for any questions, I just want to mention that Greg and Colin are also standing by to help me with answering any of them because I don't know everything necessarily. And then if you have any remaining questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to myself at the email I have listed here or on the social media I have listed as well. And thank you so much for being interested in what we do. Back to you, Brett.